today. A lot of the same moves that you've experienced before, these are all coming from the Melt Method book. So if you have that book, it's a great reference for you to follow along with the moves. And I wanted to keep these classes easy so that there weren't really a lot of new things that you had to learn. So today we're going to talk about hips. Did you know that your big toe is directly connected to your hip? So if you're having some foot issues, you could also be having some hip issues, so particularly that big toe. So when we do our foot treatment today, which we're going to do the mini softball treatment, I want you to be particularly attentive to how your big toe feels on the floor. If you're standing on the outsides of your foot, that means the big toe has left the building, right? It's off the floor, and that's going to create a little misinformation from the big toe to your hip. And also, if you feel like you're pressing a lot of body weight into that big toe, that's also going to send some mixed messages into the hip. So a nice level foot is really what we're after. And we know that your footwear can cause some issues with your feet. Walking in the same types of shoes all the time, walking on the same types of surfaces all the time can create a little bit of an over. It's great, especially now that the weather is finally getting better, to get out there and do a little light hiking, take a walk on some areas that are paved, but maybe areas that are not paved, walking along a path on the grass with a little bit more challenging landscape, provided you have good balance and stability, which is what the Melt Method is all about. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to use your soft ball from your kit, the large soft ball. We're going to just do the mini softball treatment. That's such a great one when you're just interested in kind of getting in and out, not walking. And of course, we're going to use the soft body roller today. So we're going to go into an assessment for your feet. So let's come on up. And your feet are going to be hip distance apart. Your toes are pointing towards your computer. Your arms are going to be by your side. And avoid the temptation to lock your knees. Just have your body nice and relaxed. But we'll go ahead and through a quick assessment of your body. So the first thing that I like to ask is, do you notice that you feel a little uncomfortable in this position, in this most neutral position? Because a lot of us have a tendency to stand with our feet turned out, so it feels kind of awkward to have our feet in that most neutral position. And if you take a look at yourself while you're walking, you might actually notice that you walk with one foot turned out or both feet. So let's see if we can't get that weight evenly balanced on the bottoms of your feet by having your feet in that most neutral position. So from here, I'm going to ask myself if one foot feels like it's a little heavier into the floor than the other. So I'm noticing that there's a little bit of weight outside today. Then ask yourself if there's a little bit of a concern, or just noticing if there's a weight of a particular place on the bottom of your foot, like there's an area that's getting a little bit of attention. So for some of my students, they'll notice it's the ball of the foot at the big toe that feels like it's pressing into the floor. Sometimes people say it's a heel or the outside of the foot. Just notice what you're feeling. We can travel up the shins, think about the kneecaps. Ask yourself if the kneecaps are pulled back into the joint. Don't change anything. Just come up to your quadriceps and back to your gluteus and notice if those muscles are being held under tension. And then I want you to come back and just kind of allow the knees to relax a little bit. And you might find that you've eliminated the tension in your thighs and your glutes. Okay, so that's a really great assessment. You could travel down into your feet, notice if one foot is staggered in front of the other one. So all that gets kind of stuck in your connective tissue. And what we're trying to do is rehydrate the tissue and rebalance the nervous system. And that's essentially what a foot treatment does for you. So I'm going to take my nice soft ball down onto the floor, and I'm going to take the ball right foot. I'm going to tip my body weight from side to side. You do that for about 5 or 6 times. You're just finding tolerable pressure underneath the bottom of your foot. And then come on back into a nice balanced position. Excuse me. And then you're going to bend your knees and swing your arms. Watch your shoulders here. So if you do have shoulder issues, try not to aggravate that when you're trying to rebalance your feet. And come on back up when you're ready. From here, you simply take the ball into position number 5, which is towards your heel but not on it. And we just start to gently glide the ball back and forth, just exploring that tissue. And then move the ball onto your heel by bringing your foot forward slightly. And then under pressure. back and forth. You're looking for trouble. Come on back into position number 5. Settle your body weight onto your foot and give me a little shear. So you're just scratching the ball against your foot. And then I just want you to hang out and press the ball into position number 5. You're going to take your foot completely off the ball, and we'll move the ball underneath the big toe mound inside the ball of your foot. So I really want you to pay particular attention to how that feels and how it looks. So if the ball is pushing underneath the knuckle of the big toe, then I would like to see that knuckle press up against the surface of your skin. So if I look down at my foot, I can see that bone. And that tells me that there's no inflammation in my foot. Oftentimes I'll look at students and their feet look very puffy to me, and that's inflammation. And it's a great way to assess that, because you can start to make changes with regards to the amount of inflammation that you have in your body. Inflammation isn't necessarily a bad thing when you're injured, but your body doesn't know when to turn off that message. And so we continue to create inflammation in the body. So a way to get rid of it, of course, is the MELT method, an anti-inflammatory diet, and then some supplements through omega-3s and the deep blue polyphenol complex have been proven to reduce inflammation in the body. From here, I'm going to take the ball into position number 2 inside the ball of my foot at the big toe. And I'm going to roll the ball towards my heel. I'm going to take a step forward as I come towards the back. And then I'm going to release the pressure. And I'm going to take the ball underneath my second toe. And you could take another look and see if you see that knuckle push up against the surface of your skin. My eye gaze is forward as I bring the ball back towards my heel. And I'll go ahead and repeat that for each knuckle and long bone in my foot. Sometimes it's hard to see the third toe knuckle, and then the fourth, and then the fifth. And then you can do this again 3 times anywhere you like. What we're doing here is a local rinse. We're moving the fluid from the ball of the foot back towards the heel. And then from here, I'm going to move on to friction. So make sure that this left leg is nice and stable. You're not going to push your hip out, but you're going to keep it pretty stable as you go ahead and friction, allowing that all over the place on the bottom of that right foot. If you do have a tendency to push your hip out, you could have your hand on a chair or your countertop. And then you're going to bring your right foot back down onto the floor. So let's do today the spinal flexion assessment. I love this one. It's such a game changer. It was for me when I first learned how to do the MELT method. So what I'm going to do from here, it's a little hard to see me because I'm not quite at the right angle, but I'm going to pull my belly button in to stabilize the core of my body. And I'm simply going to drop my chin, and I'm going to round my spine forward. I don't want to send my butt back behind me. I just want to get a sense of flexion through my spinal column. So as I come down, you'll notice that my right arm is significantly longer than my left. And that tells me that I have improved the hydration of my system, and I've gotten that fluid to move up into my spinal column. So you want to have enough fluid in your body to be able to move all of those muscles, joints, ligaments, and tendons without creating any compensation anywhere else. So I've slipped the ball underneath my left foot. I'm at position number 1, and I'm going to go back and forth. So I'm just kind of planting that ball inside the arch of the foot, creating a little bit more resiliency in the arch and finding that tolerable pressure. If it bothers you, you can move the ball slightly to a different place so that you don't have any pain or discomfort. From here, I'm going to bring both feet into the floor, bend my knees, swing my arms, and what I'm doing here is I'm recreating the nervous system's connection to the center of gravity in my pelvis. And that all the joints of my body are acting like little satellites, and they're communicating to the center of gravity. So it's about location. And come on back up when you're ready, and we'll go right back to position number 5 here on the left, and I'm going to go right into my glide. I'm going to move the ball onto my heel and back into position number 5. I'm going to move on to the shear, send a little bit more body weight onto that left foot, and scratch your foot against the ball, breaking up the dry, viscous fluid that accumulates right here at the bottom of your foot that could be impacting the way the ankle moves or the way the calf kind of contracts and lengthens. From here, I'm going to settle my foot right onto the floor and then take my foot completely off the ball. I'm going to return the ball to the ball of my foot underneath the big toe mound. So it's where else it's underneath my foot. I'm going to check on that. I'm going to check on that knuckle, make sure it's still popping. I'm going to move the ball back towards my heel. And I take a little step forward as I do that to keep even pressure on the ball. Move it in each knuckle and long bone. You can certainly look at your foot as you bring the ball into that knuckle, and then I want you to pick your eye gaze up and look across the room. So I've done each knuckle and long bone, and I'm going to move on to doing it just 3 more times, moving the fluid from the ball of it. So once I've done that, stabilize that right side and go ahead and do friction on the left. Let your thighs shake because we're pulling the fluid from your foot up into all those nice lines of connective tissue. And our ultimate goal is to get the fluid to move up into the spinal column. I'm going to take the ball back underneath my right foot, so I'll do friction twice on each foot. And then 1 more time. All right, so let's go back and reassess. So my feet are hip distance apart, and it feels much more comfortable for me to stand in this position. How about for you? I want you to think about the way your feet feel on the floor, and ideally both feet are evenly weighted. And you're noticing that there is not one area of your foot that's weighted more heavily into the floor, but the foot feels very evenly balanced from the ball of the foot to the side of the foot and the heel. Scan up your shin and think about your kneecap, and just notice if the knees just feel like. So when the knees are pulled in, your nervous system has decided that it needs to find that extra stability by creating that tension in through the quadriceps and the glutes, and it does that by pulling your knees in. But when you put these in, you can also end up with a little bit more of a hyperextension through your low back curve. They're best friends. So you want your knees in a nice neutral position, so that means they're not held under tension, okay? If I scan back down into my feet, do not be staggered one in front of the other, but they feel very even. So if they felt staggered, that means that the tissue is uneven, and that's going to put a little extra stress and strain on my hips as I move. The other thing that I want to go back and do now is a reassessment of spinal flexion. So I'm standing in my most neutral, my shoulders are over my hips. I'm going to pull my belly button in. I'm going to drop my chin, and I'm going to start to flex my spinal column forward so that my eye gaze is coming towards the floor. I can see my feet, my hips are stacked, and I'm going to allow my arms to just hang heavy in front of my body, and hopefully they'll be a little bit more even. So once I'm here, you could give yourself a little extra credit by moving into that hip hinge, which means my hips back behind me, and that will allow my arms to come down towards the floor a little bit more. And what I do when I come into this position is that I can notice that there's areas of tension and pull that are keeping me from getting my hands all the way down towards the floor. So it's right here on my left calf, and it's surprisingly right here in my right hamstring, and I can also feel that in my low back. So I'm going to come all the way back up and come back down onto the floor. So that's just kind of an interesting way to see where there are other areas of pull in the body. So I hope I remember, we'll do more of those at the end of the video. So I'm going to move on now into my rest assess and my rebalance. So I have my roller by my side, and I'm ready. When I'm going to come up onto that roller, it'll be close by. Let's see, I think I'll angle myself this way. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just give you this position, and then I'm going to sit back up and chat with you for a moment. Okay, so what we're doing here is an assessment of your alignment. And think about your body in terms of masses and spaces. There are areas of the body that are naturally weighted to the floor. Those are your masses, so it's like your head and your heels. And then there are areas of the body that naturally lift away from the floor, and those are your spaces. Spaces would be like the back of your neck and behind your knees. And it's been my observation that when people have stuck stress or dry tissue in the body, the spaces either get really big or they flatten out completely. So I want you to think about that as you move through some of my questions today. Palms are turned up towards the ceiling. Just allow yourself to come to a place of rest. So from here, we're going to think about the shoulder blades, the small triangular bones at the back of the rib cage. Notice if the bones feel wide and heavy on the floor. That would be ideal. The less you notice them, the better off they are. That means there's no stuck stress around the shoulders. But if you're noticing that the shoulder blades feel like they're poking into the floor, then you do have stuck stress that's accumulated around those shoulder blades. The shoulder blades will mobilize the shoulder joint, so you want to make sure that the shoulder blades are in the right position and that they're moving around nice and freely. From here, take a finger, poke it into your belly button, draw a line straight through. This is a great example of a space that's gotten too big, because for most, we can feel that the low back and the mid back have created a big arch. It's a big bridge that spans at the back. And ideally, if you draw a line from your belly button down through your body towards the floor, you'll feel that the bottom of your rib cage is a mass and it's weighted to the floor. So if it feels like it's lifted away, you have hyperextension of the spinal column, and that creates a little extra tension on the spine. So let's give you a little bit more room to move by sending some fresh fluid up into the spinal column. That's going to help your hips. Take your finger out, come down into the hips. Just notice how you're resting on the floor. Ideally, the butt cheeks are resting on the floor, but you might notice that it's your tailbone or the back of your pelvis, a little bit higher up than the butt cheeks. Just notice. If you're on the tailbone or the back of your pelvis, you have stuck stress that's accumulated in the hips, and that's going to give you some pain in your low back and your hip joints, your SI joint work on today. So from here, let's travel down into the back of your thighs. Ideally, the backs of your thighs are weighted heavily to the floor. But for a lot of students, they say, not so much. They can feel that the back of the legs have lifted away. It could be a little bit of tension through those hip flexors, could be a little dryness through the back line. Either way, we're going to try to get those legs a little heavier to the floor today with a little bit of hip to heel work. So the last thing that we do in this position is divide your body in half, right and left, top to toe. This is an autopilot assessment. It gives you a chance to see if the nervous system and the center of gravity in your body are well connected. If you feel like you're longer and heavier on one side, then that's the way your body moves. And that would be less than ideal. It creates a lot of compensation of movement through the body, which can lead to injuries and pain and dysfunction. Ideally, you want to feel evenly weighted to right and left. But don't worry if you don't feel that way, because it's an easy thing to fix, and we're going to work on that next. So from here, just roll over into a shoulder, come on up to sitting, and let's go ahead and grab your roller, and we're going to move on to the rebalance sequence. I love the rebalance sequence. You can do this really anytime. It's a great one to do about an hour or so before you go to bed, because it really does help to restore the nervous system and de-stress you. So when the connective tissue is dry, the nervous system is stressed out. So we want to dehydrate the system and rebalance the nervous system as well. My hands are going to come down onto the floor. My feet are hip distance apart, and I'm going to allow my shoulders to just get nice and heavy towards the back of the shoulders, so I can feel my shoulder blades kind of around the roller. And I'm going to start by gently rocking my body to the right and left. You can notice that my left hand is coming off the floor as I tip my body weight to the right. I'm doing that by stabilizing my left shoulder. If I were to keep my left hand on the floor, and when I tip to the right, I would create this pull across the front of my shoulder. So if I just kind of allow that arm to be stable and rock, then I won't get that pull across the front of my shoulder. So 30 to 60 seconds and fresh fluid through the spinal column, turning on your body's ability to stay balanced on the roller. And when you're ready, come on back to center. I'm going to take my hands onto my pelvis, the heel of the hand on my hip bones, the fingertips to the pubic bone. And I'm going to do 3 moves through my low back and pelvis. It's going to be tuck, tilt, and neutral. I'm going to take my low back curve down towards the roller. The heel of my hand comes down a little bit, and the tips of the fingers come up a little bit. I can feel my low back is on the roller, and my ribs are on the roller too. When you're ready, I'm going to take that low and lift it away from the roller, and I'm going to do the tilt position. So it's the opposite end range of movement through my spinal column. And I've lifted everything. There's a big space at my back. The heel of the hand comes up a little bit, and the tip of my fingers drop down a little bit. So from here, let's go back to the tuck, because we're going to move into our neutral. I find it easy to do this from the tuck position because I'm going to let my rib cage stay nice and heavy on the roller, and I'm going to ease my low back only away from the roller. So I'm differentiating movement from the low back to the mid back. But what I find once I do that is that I still feel like I'm a little heavy on the back of my pelvis. So I just take my hands down to the floor, engage my core a little bit, and pick my hips up and reset my pelvis. And it just gets the tailbone to be a little bit more weighted to the roller. From here, the heel of the hand and the tips of my fingers are very level. And that gives me a really good indication that my pelvis is most neutral. I might still feel like there's a little bit of lift in my ribs, but that's just me today. And we're going to move on to upper back compression sequence, so that's going to help that. From here, let's move on to the 3D breath breakdown and the 3D breath. I'm going to take one hand to the chest, one hand to the belly, and just allow your body to relax into the roller. Take a couple of breaths in your most neutral alignment, and just notice if both hands are moving as you breathe in and out. Ideally, the ribs are moving up towards the ceiling and back down towards the roller. So when you're ready, let's move the hands to the sides of the rib cage to explore the width of the ribs. The elbows have dropped down onto the floor. The back of the shoulders are nice and heavy. Just relax on your roller, nice and neutral through the spine. And now as I inhale, ideally, I'd like to feel a little bit of width in through the ribs. So I want the ribs to feel like they're pushing out into my hands. So it's subtle movement. And then we'll take it one more change. One hand to the throat by the collarbones, the other hand way down to the pubic bone. And a nice inhale here to explore the length of the rib cage. Ideally, both hands are moving away from the midline of the body. So I'm going to take my hands onto my belly while I'm going to do the 3D breath. And we use this periodically during our class, so it's really nice to get a connection with what that does for you here. I'm going to inhale to expand my rib cage, and on my exhale, I'm going to pull my belly button in and give me a noisy exhale. No changes in that low back curve. And I'm engaging those deep core stabilizers so I can feel my waistline pull in. Once you've connected with that core, then return your breath pattern to something quiet and see if you can still recruit those core stabilizers. If that SH sound doesn't work for you, you could try the S sound or the H sound. And then once you tap to that core, try it without making that noisy breath. Return your hands to the floor and just give me a little gentle rocking side to side. And then when you're ready, you're going to come back to center, lengthen one leg, and slither off your roller to go ahead and give me a reassessment. So your palms are turned up towards the ceiling, your arms and legs are extended, and we'll go back through that assessment. So notice how your body feels. Usually, for me, it feels very weighted to the floor. I feel like I'm at the beach lying in a hole in the sand. So the shoulder blades ideally are wide and flat on the floor. If you take a finger and poke it into your belly button, ideally the ribs have come down onto the floor or they're closer to the floor than they were before. Take your finger out, travel into your pelvis, and notice if you're feeling like the butts have come down onto the floor. And then come down into the hamstrings, the back of your thighs. And just notice if they feel a little bit closer. They might not be perfect, but a little bit closer. So you're starting to restore the natural curves in through your body rather than holding your body under tension. So that reassessment of the autopilot, just divide your body in half, right and left, top to toe, and notice if you're feeling a little bit heavier or longer on one side, or are we starting to get the body to feel a little bit more symmetrical right and left, which is really our goal. Okay, when you're ready, come on up, roll over into a shoulder, and come on up to sitting. And let's move on to the upper body compression sequence. So that's going to be the rib length assessment, the upper back glide and shear, do a little bit for the shoulder blades, a rinse, and then we'll come back and reassess the rib length. So I'm going to hold my roller kind of the side, make sure I have enough room. Okay, so I like to put my roller just a little bit below my rib cage. My hands are going to go behind my head. Just make sure that if you do have some shoulder issues that you don't aggravate anything. Sometimes when students bring their hands behind the head, they hike up their shoulders. So try to let everything be nice and relaxed, as comfortable as you can. The elbows are going to be open out to the side. I'm not forcing them out. They're just kind of where they want to rest. From here, I'm going to pull my belly button in to stabilize the core of my body. My feet are a little bit further away from the roller rather than being kind of close. So a little further away, pull your belly button in, pick your hips up. You're gonna bend your knees a little bit more, and that's gonna pull the roller to your shoulder blades. From here, I'm gonna tuck my pelvis. My pubic bone's gonna come up towards the ceiling, and I'm gonna hold that tuck as I bring my hips down onto the floor. So my head stays in its neutral. Avoid the temptation to pick your chin up when you do this extension exercise through your upper back. Holding your head in a nice neutral position, take a breath in, stabilize the core, hold that stabilization, and let the upper back extend over the roller. This is just an honest assessment of how far back you can go. If I were to arch my spine and lift my chin, I could get way further back, but that's not my goal. I just want to see what's going on with the tissue. So you could curl up just a little bit, and again, inhale, and exhale, engage your core, and try it one more time. Let that upper back come over the other side of the roller, and just assess how far back you can go. From here, I'm going to shift my right elbow towards the right side. My eye gaze is towards the ceiling, and I'm just going to ask myself, how far can I go without shifting my hips or turning my head? Take a breath now into the left side of your rib cage, and notice if it feels a little tight and sticky, like you could take a bigger breath, but the ribs just don't allow you to move enough to do that. Take a nice breath in, and on your exhale, let's come back through center. Inhale and stay. Exhale, side bend to the left side, eye gaze to the ceiling, the hips aren't going anywhere. And then just assess the range of motion here to the left side. Take a breath into the right side of the rib cage. And just notice how you feel. Sometimes you might have a little bit better movement on one side than the other. It's not uncommon. So come back to center when you're ready. My elbows are going to come up towards the ceiling, and I want you to flex your spinal column so that your eye gaze is looking towards your thighs, kind of right above your knees. Pull your belly button in, pick your hips up, and I just want you to move the roller. It's going to go about 2 or 3 inches up and down, and you're exploring the tissue right in between the shoulder blades. You might start to notice that there's a place that feels a little tender, and if you feel that way, you want to find the barrier, the edge of where it feels tender. If you don't find anything, let's just all go smaller and smaller until we stop. And I want you to hold your tuck, settle your hips down onto the floor, and you're going to scratch your back by going side to side. And we'll do that about 3 times on each side. And then I want you to come back to center. Engage the core by pulling your belly button in on your exhale. Lift your hips. And let's walk your feet a little closer to the roller so you just come a little bit lower than your shoulder blades. And now I'm going to move up and down against the roller, looking for a little treble, a little bit on my shoulder blades. If you find something, that's meaning that you're looking for that barrier. There's a place that feels a little dry and sticky. So just start to nudge up against that barrier. If you don't find anything, just choose any spot you like and start to go smaller and smaller until you stop. Engage your core, send your hips down to the floor, holding that tuck position, and go ahead and scratch your back against the roller. Come on back to center when you're ready. Pull your belly button in, pick your hips up, and I want you to move the roller back to your shoulder blades. From here, I'm going to have you let the left elbow drop to the side a little bit. The right elbow moves up towards the ceiling. Your knees and hips are going to shift slightly to the left, and you're going to come up and down against the roller. You're moving now on the inside edge of the left shoulder blade. Looking for trouble. I found something. I'm going to get smaller and smaller until I stop. Settle your hips on the floor. Take your left hand onto your left shoulder and draw some circles with the elbow. And then open and close that elbow so you're making like a little butterfly wing. And then bring your hand back behind your head and just take a moment to take a breath and allow the tissue to adapt and change. Okay, same thing other side. Pull your belly button in, engage your core, shift your shoulders and your hips. Pick your ready. Let your right elbow drop open. The left elbow comes towards the ceiling. Shift your hips and knees over to the right side and move up and down against the right shoulder blade. You do that for about 3, 4, 5 times. See if you can find something to work on. Smaller and smaller until you stop, finding a barrier if you can. Send your hips down to the floor. Hold that tuck. The right hand comes to the right shoulder and you draw your circles. Reverse the direction if you like. And then open and close as if it were a butterfly wing. Bringing your right hand back behind your head, just take a moment and come back to center when you're ready. We're going to move on to the rinse. Pull your belly button in, pick your hips up. I'm going to move the roller a little higher to my upper back and start to move the roller slowly down my ribs, bend my knees to bring my roller back up. I still have my elbows poking up towards the ceiling. And I do that about 3 or 4 times. So from here, I'm going to come on back to the position that we were starting with, and that's going to give us a chance to reassess the extension of the thoracic spine. So I have the roller a little bit below my rib cage, a little bit below my shoulder blade, sorry. And I have my feet a little bit further away from my hips. Pull your belly button in to engage the core, pick your hips up, and bend your knees a little bit more. So now the roller is back onto the shoulder blades, exactly where it was when we first started. I'm going to tuck my pelvis and return my hips to the floor. I'm going to let my elbows open out just a little bit wherever they're comfortable. Head stays in neutral. And now is the moment of truth. I'm going to see if I've gotten a little bit more movement through the thoracic spine. So I'm still in that tuck and my head's still in neutral, but I'm getting a lot further back over the other side of the roller. From here, you could flex your spine a little bit and then exhale, come into your side bend, and just notice if you get a little bit further over. Take a breath into the opposite side of the rib cage on this left side, and it's a nice big breath. Come through center when you're ready. Shift over to the other side, so I'm moving to my left, and take a breath into the right side of the rib cage, and just notice if you've gotten a nice big breath. Come through center when you're ready, and come off your roller. Okay, so you don't really have to go back into the rest assess position, lying on your back with your hands up, because that really was a nice assessment. And I hope that you found that you got a lot more movement through the spinal column. So let's move on to lower body compression. So this is a nice, easy, very passive sequence. We're going to do back and thigh shear, and we're going to do the calves. So you're going to lie on your back, and you're going to extend your legs over the roller. Try to keep your heels down on the floor, and that'll keep any tension accumulating in your hip flexors. The roller is really high of the legs, but my butt is down on the floor. And I'm just going to open and close my legs. I want to turn my toes out when I open, toes in when I close. And I want to feel the back of my thighs scraping against the roller. This is a passive shear, just the weight of the legs is enough to break up that dry fluid that accumulates at the back of your thighs. So I do that about 3 or 4 or 5 times. Come on back to center, and then you're going to take your roller and move it down about an inch or so. So now I'm kind of in the middle of the back of my thigh, and I'm going to do the same thing. You could do one leg at a time, which is kind of interesting if you are having a hip issue, to really isolate where that issue is coming from, or you can just save yourself a little time and go ahead and do both legs. Come on back to center. Allow the legs to be heavy on the roller for a moment, and then let's move them again. So now they're just above my knees, the back of my knees, and I'm going to open and close. Come on back to center when you're ready. I'm going to take one foot onto my roller because I'm going to move my roller to my calf. So bring it all the way down. Sorry, my dog's outside the door. I'm going to take my right leg, cross it over my left, keep that left calf nice and heavy on the roller, and I'm going to bend my knee. Yeah, the idea is to keep the calf on the roller as you move. You also want to keep your ankles very quiet. You don't want them to be active in this exploration. You can always take the roller and move it down a little bit or up a little bit. You can move your leg right or left so that you can get to the inside or the outside of that calf, but you are looking for treble. So this is a glide. So I found a little knot right here. So I'm going to start to just nudge up against it. So this is that barrier that I was talking about before. There's dryness here. There are nerves that are inside the connective tissue, and so they're kind of fussy when you roll over them. So I'm just going to roll up to that spot, so I don't want to irritate anything any more than it already is. I'm going to let my leg be heavy on my roller, and I'm just going to turn my leg right and left. So I'm rolling across that issue. And then you can hang out here for a moment. If you wanted to, you could add another shear technique. This would be an indirect shear. So I'm moving the joints, and that's going to change the shape of the connective tissue in my calf. And I'm just going to hang out and wait. Same thing other side. So I'm just going to recross my ankles. I'm going to let that calf be nice and heavy on the roller. Everything is relaxed. And I'm going to bend and extend my knee. And I'm looking for treble here on this right calf. And you know, it might just call you to move the roller up a little bit or down a little bit. You can do this in more than one spot on your calf. We're just going to do it once, but if you do this on your own, you can move it all over the place. So here's a little spot on this right calf. So I'm just going to move against the roller, nudging up against the tissue. And then I'm going to hold it and wait. And let's go ahead and shear. This would be a direct shear because I'm directly pressing the tissue into the roller by going back and forth. And then I'm going to hang out and wait. And I'm going to do an indirect shear by circling this right ankle. And that's going to pull on the connective tissue that's surrounding and going into that calf muscle and the soleus muscle. And I'm going to hang out here and wait. Okay, when you're ready, let's come onto your side and a little bit of inner thigh. So I'm going to position the roller so that it's in front of my body. My foot's going to come up onto the roller and my knee is going to drop down. So my whole shin is on the roller and I'm just above my knee. So I want my kneecap to actually be on the opposite side of the roller. My foot comes to the floor. I'm going to take the roller up just a little bit higher so that it's about eye level. And I'm going to push the roller away from me a little bit so that I have this little triangle of space in front of me. Everything's very relaxed, but the key here is to move from shoulder to hip. So don't move just your hip to get the roller to move. Allow your body to roll towards the floor and use your hand into the carpet or your mat to push yourself back up. I have my big toe on the floor and my heel is kind of making a little circle, and that gets me a little bit more exposure on the roller on the front of my thigh. So once I start to find my spot, I'm going to go smaller and smaller until I stop. And let's do 2 shear techniques. I'm going to lift my foot up off the floor. I'm going to bend my knee and I'm going to straighten my leg out. Sometimes it's when you move your leg that you really feel that tension inside your connective tissue. Bend your knee so your heel close to your hip, and then bring your foot a little bit towards the ceiling and then back down towards the floor. And I do about 3 of each of those and let your foot rest down onto your mat. And from here, I'm going to roll over into my chest, and the roller just naturally moves up to my inner thigh, right kind of in the middle. And then I would suggest, if you're comfortable, just let your upper body come right down onto the floor and just move against the roller from here. And that'll keep you from having any accumulated stress in the low back. So sometimes we do this in that cobra position, that sternal position. But if you just let your chest come down, then you won't trouble your back. Same thing here, you kind of want to move your body towards the roller and back rather than just moving through your hip, especially if you do have hip pain. So I'm finding a spot here in my inner thigh, smaller and smaller until I stop. Never a problem to find an issue here. Let the leg be nice and heavy. The foot floats off the floor. I'm going to bend and extend. Keep your knee bent and bring your foot up towards the ceiling and back down. So the inner thigh is like a super highway of fluid and also helps you maintain your balance. So you want to make sure that the inner thigh is well hydrated. Let your foot come down onto the floor and just give it a little rest. So from here, I'm going to take that roller and I'm just going to pull it up a little bit higher so it's really resting up inside the inner thigh, almost towards my pelvis. And the same thing. You can get a lot of stuck stress right here. It's very close to your hip flexor. And I'm going to move against my roller, find my spot, settle into it, and just wait for a moment. And I'm going to bend my knee and straighten out my leg. And the whole time the leg is very heavy and weighted to the roller. Keep your heel close to your hip and just turn your foot up towards the ceiling and then back down. And then just let it hang out here for a moment. Just take a breath, let everything relax. And then we'll move to the other leg. Aren't you glad we only have two legs? So I'm going to move to the other side. My arch of foot comes on the roller. My leg drops down. My foot comes over the other side of the roller. And I'm letting my kneecap come onto the opposite side of the roller, kind of in this little divot, this little, I call it the other white meat of the inner thigh. The roller comes up a little bit and push it away. So you have this little pizza pie shape in front of you. The hand comes to the floor and you start to move against the roller by moving your shoulder and hips towards the roller. The big toe can stay on the floor and you can swivel your heel around a little bit. And that'll give you an opportunity to find some stuck stress perhaps above your knee, more towards the front of your thigh. So there's a spot. Smaller and smaller until you stop. I'm going to levitate my foot off the floor. I'm going to bend and straighten. We'll just do 2 shears today. The heel stays close to my hip, and then I'm going to turn my foot up towards the ceiling and back down. And I'm going to hang out here and wait. So from here, I'm going to take my chest towards the floor. The leg is staying on the roller. It's just a matter of moving a little bit against the roller. It just kind of automatically goes right where you want it to be. I'm right in the middle of my inner thigh. Your chest can come down onto the floor so you don't hurt your back if you do have low back issues. And you just start to move against the roller. Same thing as that little twizzle in through the foot. I hope you can see that. And I'm just looking for trouble. So there's this spot right there at the inner thigh. It just feels kind of hard. I'm going to go smaller and smaller until I stop. Let my body kind of settle a little bit. And then I'm going to go right into the shear technique. The heel stays close to the hip. And bring my foot up towards the ceiling. If you feel like you're rolling over a little speed bump, there could be a tendon there. So just make sure that you make that movement a little smaller so you're not irritating the tendon. And let your foot come right down onto the floor and just relax for a moment. And then from here, you can either use your hand to pull the roller up or shift your body so that the roller moves a little higher up towards your pelvis. And same thing here, I'm just going to move against the roller. Smaller and smaller until you stop, just kind of feeling your way through that tissue. And letting your leg be heavy, lift your foot, bend in for the and the heel stays close to your hip, and you move the foot up towards the ceiling and back down. And then just let your foot relax and just hang out for a moment. So when you're ready, I want you to sit on up and let's go ahead and rinse the tissue. Excuse me. So from here, I have the roller coming off to the right side. And I'm going to let the inside of my right calf be against the roller. So the roller's off to the right, inside of the right calf against the roller. My body is oriented more towards the left. And I'm going to have a bent knee here on this left side. And you can do this by extending the right leg, turn the toes to the ceiling, and bend your knee, keeping your calf against the roller. So let your foot and knee go off to the right. Oh, sorry, off to the left. Extend the leg, toes to the ceiling, and then knee. I'm keeping my hip right on the floor as I do that. It's a little awkward for some people. The other way to do it is to slide your butt on the floor as you do this. So we call that one the long pass. The first one was the short pass. And the reason why we're moving to the inside of the calf as we come up and go down the back side of the calf is that that's the way the fluid flows inside your connective tissue. Okay, so then I'm going to move the roller up, and I'm going to do the same thing on the inside of my thigh and then the back of my thigh. So you can do a short pass by keeping your hips on the floor. It's a little awkward for some folks. Or you can slide your hips and turn your foot up. So we have everything going to the left, moving up my inner thigh, turn the toes to the ceiling and have everything come back down. The fluid moves up the inner thigh and down the back lines. Okay, so let's do the same thing over on the other side. So I'm oriented to the right, the left calf is against the roller. I start with that short pass, so my hips are going to stay right on the floor. If this is comfortable for you, this is the one you do. If you're happy with sliding your butt on the mat or on the floor, then go ahead and do that. Actually, you probably should do this on the floor or the carpet, not on a mat, because your butt can get kind of stuck against the mat. Okay, now I'm going to move the roller up to my inner thigh. Everything's shifting over here to the right side, and you can do a short pass, keeping your hips on the floor. Or you can do the long pass. So my butt is just sliding against the floor. It's a little bit more pressure in my hands when I do that. So if your hands are bothering you, stick with the short pass. Okay, so from here, let's just have you do a quick reassessment. So just come back down on your back. And what you might notice is that you still feel nice and heavy through the shoulder blades. If you take a finger into your belly button, you might notice you have more weight on that thoracic spine. Come down into your hips. Hopefully you're feeling like you're on your butt cheeks. But maybe the really revealing part is that you're getting a little bit more weight into the back of your thighs. We're going to do the lower body length techniques now, which includes hip to heel, which really does give you a chance to lengthen the tissue from your hip to your heel. So let's go ahead and do that next. You're going to be on your back, round roller. You're going to have your knees bent, and you place the roller right underneath your bent knees. I want you to engage your core, pick your hips up, and bring your hips onto the roller. From here, you're going to pull your belly button in and bring your knees up. I love this one because the thoracic spine really gets a chance to be nice and heavy on the floor. The knees are at a 12 o'clock position, and the knees are slightly in towards the torso. In other words, they're not away, which puts a little bit of stress and strain on your hip flexor. So if the knees come in, you can actually feel that with your fingers. If my knees are towards the ceiling, my hip flexor gets engaged a little bit. But if my knees come in, it's a lot more relaxing. So ideally, this is your spot. Let the back of your pelvis be nice and heavy against the roller, and bring your hands onto your rib cage. And that helps keep the ribs nice and still, so you're not moving everything. You're just going to differentiate the movement of the hips from the ribs by bringing the knees a little bit over to the right side. And I want you to draw some circles. So my knees are over at a 1 o'clock position. This is your SI, glide and shear. I'm going to hold the knees still, and I'm going to circle just my right knee. Everything stays still. After 3 circles, I want you to reverse. So here's 3, 2, and 1. The knees come together at this 1 o'clock side, and you march. There's no movement in your ankle or your knee. It's all happening in your hip. Bring the knees back over this 1 o'clock side. Take a nice breath in, and on your exhale, engage your core a little bit. Bring your knees across from that 1 o'clock to 11 o'clock side, but the ribs stay nice and weighty as you do that. Let the hips be heavy on your roller, and you're going to draw some circles. And then from here, let the knees settle, and the left knee all by itself is going to draw those circles. This is lubing up that left hip socket. Reverse the direction. Keeping that weight nice and heavy on that or the left side of the back of your pelvis. It's a little lighter on the right. March. And let your knees settle here to this left side. From here, exhale to engage your core, come back to center. Let's bring that left foot to the floor. I haven't changed my low back. I'm going to let my right knee come in a little bit closer. Sometimes people, the tissue's all connected, so when the knee comes in, sometimes they collapse into the low back. So just make sure you're letting your knee come in, but you're still staying neutral through the low back curve. My left foot's on the floor. I can feel my big toe. There's that big toe to hip connection again that we want. The foot's flat to the floor. The knee, my ankle, and my hip are in a straight line. And I'm going to bring my hand either to the hamstring muscle or to the shin. Sometimes this is kind of a far reach for people. I feel like there's a lot of stress on the shoulder when they reach for the shin. It's totally fine to let the hand come to the hamstring. So whatever is comfortable for you is going to work. So we're thinking about the tissue at the front of the left thigh. I'm going to inhale. As I exhale, I'm going to engage my core, and I'm going to go into a nice tuck position. So my pubic bone is coming up towards the ceiling. I feel my low back come down towards the floor, and there's just a little bit of pressure here on the right side. It's not a big pull. It's just a little bit of pressure. And I want to think about the tissue at the front of this left thigh. It's not so much of a move as it is a sensation of bringing that left knee away from your hip. So I just hold on that tissue, the knee on the left, pulling away from the left hip, and I can get that length of tissue here on this left side. Inhale to release the tension from that tissue on the left thigh, and that's when the fluid moves back into the connective tissue system here on the left. Let's do it twice more. I'm going to inhale, exhale to engage the core, tuck your pelvis, and now think about pulling that left knee away from your hip. It's more of a sensation than a physical move, and you can feel the length of tissue on the thigh. Inhale to release, and again, that's when the fluid pulls back in. And one more time. Inhale to engage. Exhale to engage. Tuck your pelvis, and a little bit of a lengthening here on the left, a little bit of a pull on the right, but not very much at all. And let's release, and we'll change the leg. So the right foot's going to come to the floor. I'm still in my neutral. I'm going to bring my left knee in, and I think about the way my right foot feels on the floor. Can I feel my big toe, the ball of the foot, the side of the foot, and my heel? Is my ankle and knee and hip in alignment, nice and neutral? I'm going to bring my hands on the left side either to the back of the thigh or the shin. If you feel like you're reaching, then just let the hands come to the back of the thigh. I'm going to inhale to prepare, exhale to engage my core. And notice the pubic bone comes up towards the ceiling. The low back feels like it's reaching down towards the mat, and I'm getting the sensation of length along the front of my right thigh. I'm going to accentuate that by feeling like I can pull my right knee even further away from my hip. I'm going to release all that tension, and I'm going to exhale and start the sequence again. Exhale to engage, tuck, and lengthen. Hold that for a moment. Inhale and release. Let's do it one more time. Inhale to stay, exhale to engage. Tuck your pelvis, lengthen the tissue at the front of the thigh. Inhale and stay. Exhale and release. Okay, I'm going to bring my knees back up, and I'm going to go into the tuck, and I'm going to go into, let's do hip to heel next. So keep your right foot down on the floor for me. The left leg is going to extend out at about a 45-degree angle, and the foot's going to be flat on the bottom. Sometimes when I ask people to flatten out that foot, the knee gets hyperextended and they get all tight and grippy in the quadricep. So see, you can't keep the foot flexed, but not tighten up your quadriceps. So you might have to soften your knee a little bit. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and inhale to point my toes. And I'm exhaling to engage my core as I flex my foot. And I'm going to think about the length of tissue from my heel to my hip without hyperextending this left knee. I'm going to inhale to release, flex your foot, exhale, engage your core, and flex. And think about the hip to heel tissue. And then inhale to release. And let's go ahead and bend your left knee, and we'll do the same thing on the right side. So my right knee is going to come up, my foot's off the floor. I'm going to extend my leg at about a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to flex my foot and feel that length of tissue at the back of my thigh, but try not to hyperextend your right knee. Inhale to flex. Inhale to point. Exhale to engage your core, and flex. And there's that length of tissue down the back of the leg. It feels kind of creepy crawly from your calf to your hip. Inhale to point your toes and kind of release that tension. Exhale, engage your core, flatten out your foot, and feel that length of tissue from your hip to your heel. And then just inhale to release. My knees are going to come back up. I'm going to take my hands. And what I want to do here is the pelvic tuck and tilt and low back decompress. And that's how we'll end our class today. So I have my knees back up. They're relaxed through the hip flexors. But I want to set up a little stability between my legs and my hands. So I'm going to put a little pressure into my thighs from my hands and from my hands to my thighs. So I'm keeping that under tension. Try not to lock your elbows. Try not to hike up your shoulders. You're just feeling like you're kind of pressed into this position. I'm going to go into my tuck, which allows my low back to reach down towards the floor. I feel like my knees are coming higher towards the ceiling. And then I'm going to inhale, and as I exhale, engage my core, and I'm going to go back into a tilt position. So now I feel like I'm rolling kind of up on the roller. Inhale and stay. Exhale, engage your core. Tuck your pelvis. And I get a sense that my knees are coming up towards the ceiling, but my back pelvis feels like it's rolling down the body side of the roller. I'm going to inhale and stay. Exhale, engage your core. And go into a tilt position. I feel like the back of my pelvis is coming up on top of the roller, and I'm getting that big arch in my back. So instead of the big arch in my back for the tilt, I want to refine that and go basically from tuck to neutral. So I'm going to go back to my tuck. And I can get a sense that my ribs, really right around my shoulder blades and a little touch below, are on the floor. I'm going to inhale and stay, and on my exhale, I'm going to move just my low back. And I'm going to try to keep the weight of that thoracic spine on the floor, right around where my shoulder blades are and just below. And this is my neutral. So see if you can find that position. You'll feel like the hips are on the roller. There's a little bit of tension coming from the hands and the thighs. You can feel the back of your pelvis weighted to the roller, and you can feel the back of the head gently pressing into the floor. From here, I want you to give me three deep breaths. You're going to inhale to expand your ribs. Exhale to engage the core. Inhale. Engage the core in your exhale. One more time. So that was our low back decompression. Go ahead and bring your feet to the floor. Engage the core to pick your hips up. Take yourself off the roller. Lengthen out your body. Palms are turned up towards the ceiling. Arms and legs are lengthened for a final reassessment. So from here, ideally, you should feel that the shoulder blades are barely noticeable. They're wide and flat and heavy on the floor. Take a finger, poke it into your belly button, and notice if you feel that the bottom of the rib cage is nice and weighted to the floor. Ideally, the butt cheeks are weighted to the floor. So with your fingers still in your belly button and the sense of weight in the butt cheeks, you might notice this really beautiful lift through the back. It actually feels expansive in that low back. From here, travel down into the backs of your thighs, and I hope that you're feeling that the legs are evenly weighted and the back of the thighs are heavy to the floor. One more final assessment for the autopilot. your body in half, right to left, and just notice if you're feeling evenly weighted from side to side. Okay, I didn't forget. We're going to go ahead and do one more time for your spinal flexion assessment, and let's see if you feel like you've loosened up some of that sticky tissue to get yourself positioned through the spinal column, but also through that hip hinge. So come on back up to standing. My feet are hip distance apart, my arms are by my side, and I want to get myself in a nice neutral. Shoulders are over hips. Pull your belly button in, drop your chin, and let's do spinal flexion first. So as I roll forward, I get this sense that I can see my feet. I want my feet, my knees, and my hips to stay stacked. I don't want to send my butt back quite yet. And I feel very loose through my back. Once I come down as far as I can go, I'm going to send my hips back and see if I can get a little. So I feel like I'm getting much closer to the floor than I did before. Some of you have really loose hips and you might get your hands all the way down. And now I have a little bit of resistance that's moved up towards my shoulders, my upper back and shoulders, and I feel a lot longer through the back line of my body. Pull your belly button in, and come on back up. So that is our Melt Method hip series. I hope that was successful for you. I'd love to hear your comments. So give me a note, drop me a line. You can send me a text, anything. I'd love to hear from you. And come on in and take a class whenever you get a chance. We meet on Wednesdays at Awaken Networks from 5:30 to 6:30. So I hope to talk to you soon. Lots of love to all of you. Bye.